Hey, this response video is to Standardal regarding his response video to Jack from Together for Peace concerning his video about why Christians don't still stone their children. And so first of all, Al, what I want to point out to you right off the bat is in your response video, you made this sort of blanket statement that every Christian picks and chooses the particular text or passage that they want that bolsters their particular opinion or the point that they're trying to get across, which in the first place, that's really ignorant. That's absolutely no different than saying all blacks eat fried chicken and watermelon, or all Mexicans are lazy. Blanket statements are never correct, so I think you were kind of in error there. Next time you might want to use a qualifier like many or most Christians rather than a superlative. At any rate, with that being said, the next thing you did was you went and did exactly what you just accused Christians of doing, which was you picked one verse out of the Bible, one sentence really, to illustrate your assertion that Jesus himself said that we should still be stoning our children. Okay, so that's number two. You're guilty of exactly what you just accused people of, because I can go through just about any work of literature and I can find a sentence or a fragment of a sentence or a fragment of a thought and use that to say, if I take it out of context and it can be exactly contrary to the thought that the author was trying to get across. And this is what you've done. Let me explain it to you or to anybody else. If you really thought that that's what Jesus was saying there, then you're only guilty of ignorance, and that's kind of an excusable transgression. But if you understood that what you were doing was cherry picking, which you just accused other people of doing, you're not only a hypocrite, but you're also guilty of at best, intellectual dishonesty, at worst, lying by omission. So here's the way it lays out. This is the crux of the story here. The scribes and the Pharisees have come to Jesus and asked him, why do you and your disciples transgress the traditions, keep in mind that word, traditions, of our elders by not washing your hands before you eat bread? And Jesus answered them and said, why do you also transgress the commandments of God by your traditions? Okay, so there's a difference. Jesus is talking about the commandments of God, and he's saying, wait a second, why are you waving your traditions in my face when you yourself, by your own traditions, have transgressed the laws of God? And the way that he chooses to illustrate that, and that's the next verse, and that's the one that you've picked, is Jesus says, because the commandments of God say, if your children are disobedient, if they curse you, then you should put them to death. Now, first of all, keep in mind we're talking about adult children here, not little minor children being stoned to death for saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Second of all, it doesn't stop there. Let's read the actual quote is from Matthew 15:4. Jesus said, for God commanded, saying, honor thy father and mother, and he that curseth father and mother, let him die the death. Okay, and that's a particular passage that you've chosen to illustrate that Jesus is now saying you should still be stoning your children. But what he's doing is he's sort of sarcastically asking these scribes and Pharisees, why are you waving these traditions in my face when you yourself, by your traditions, don't even follow the law of God? Because you say, now the Jews had changed this thing, and this is what 5 and 6 says, but ye say, whoever shall say to his father or his mother, it is a gift, by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, and that person honors not his father or his mother, he shall be set free. Thus ye have made the commandment of God to no effect by your tradition. So what Jesus is saying is, God also commanded you that if your children were disobedient, if they cursed you in their adulthood and created dissension, that you should put them to death. But what you have done, this is paraphrasing what Jesus is saying, but what you have done by your traditions over the years, you've sort of insulated yourself from having to do this. It's kind of messy business putting your children to death for being disobedient. Okay, and this is the whole point of the thing. So what these scribes and Pharisees and Jews in general had done was they had sort of started rationalizing. And what Jesus is saying, if a child now grown as an adult comes to his parents and says, I'm no longer bound by you, I'm going out, I'm my own person, I'm going out, and whatever benefit you have gotten from me through my labor, through my efforts, through the things that you've had me do as a child and an adolescence, that's gravy. That was a gift to you, but now I'm my own person and I'm going out on my own. And the scribes and the Pharisees said, well, if somebody comes up, what this person is doing is basically emancipating themselves from their parents. And the scribes and the Pharisees said, well, if this person comes up, it's true. He is his own person, so if he wants to leave and go to a far-off land, he'll be set free. He has no more duty to be bound to his parents. Okay? And what Jesus did was he used that as a sarcastic rebuttal to the scribes and the Pharisees who said, why are you transgressing our traditions? And Jesus said, you don't even follow the commandments of God because of your own traditions. Jesus was clearly not telling them that they should still be doing this because and if you don't understand this, then you don't understand what the entire Bible is about. The law and the prophecy was that God was going to eventually send a Redeemer that was going to do away with the old law. And he was going to create and establish a new covenant. So when Jesus says later in that same chapter, don't think that I'm here to destroy the law, I'm here to fulfill it. He's there to fulfill the old law being done away with. And Jesus' entire ministry was telling the Old Testament Jews that they had screwed it up and they had gotten it wrong, and he was here to set down the new covenant with God. And Jesus told the Old Testament Jews, if you can't figure out what I'm saying, then just remember this one thing, and it's what people call the golden rule. Love thy neighbor as you love thyself, because this sums up the laws and the prophets. All right? So if you want to understand what the laws and the prophets were, all the culmination, what the Jews were supposed to get and didn't get through these laws and traditions, was that all they had to be doing the whole time was loving each other. Because if you love each other, you're not going to kill each other, you're not going to steal from each other, you're not going to transgress upon your neighbor because you love him like a brother. That's it. So I'm sorry, bro, but you're absolutely wrong. You want to rebut this statement? That would be great, but you have to do it within the context of the first 6 verses of Matthew 15, if you would please, because this is an actual story, and please don't go through and cherry pick and do exactly what you're accusing others of doing. And I'd like to hear, if you're not going to rebut this, I'd like to hear, oh, okay, you're right. You wanted a response from Jack. I don't think he really gave it to you, and I think somebody should have. So there's your response. There's why you're incorrect in your assertion. And if you can't rebut that, if you can't show me where I'm wrong or where I'm just cherry picking, then I'd like for you to come back and retract your statement. Anyway, that would be the honorable thing to do. Anyway, bro, like I say, I'm not trying to get in your face with this, but you're incorrect, and I think I've basically set the record straight for you. So, peace. Have a good day.